We're going to take a look at a situation that might come up in the lab exam, CCIE Collabv version 2, whereby you have intercluster lookup service and global dial plan replication fully working, but not actually showing in the database. The learned patterns not showing in the database. Let me explain a little bit more about what I mean, the exact nature of this bug, and I've given you the bug ID over here. Okay, so the situation I'm trying to run into right now is involving three UCM clusters. We've got the HQ cluster over here, and here we have a pub publishing to the subscriber, and the version is what is in the CCIE lab. It's version 12.0. So there's our first cluster. Our middle cluster over here is a SME. Okay, and this is just a SME publisher, single node UCM cluster. Remember, SME Session Manager edition of Core Manager is just a core manager without any endpoints and users. In other words, just has zip trunks in my case. And then we have our Site B cluster over here. Again, this is also just a pub. So we're going to have a SME pub and a Site B pub. But over here, unique to HQ is that we do have a database replication. Now, over at Site B, we have a phone, an 8845 phone over here. There's a directory URI. And I'm also going to add an enterprise number and an E164 number, a couple of numbers. So I'm going to have an enterprise number and an E164 number that we're going to be advertising using ILS. In other words, we're using global dial plan replication. The directory URI over here is going to be advertised through the SME. We're going to push those three numbers, well, one URI and two numbers, going to send those to the SME. The SME is going to propagate those over here. And something very similar on the other way around. Over at HQ, we have a URI, we have an enterprise number, we have an E164 number as well. And we're going to be sending those through the SME to the B cluster. I'm going to make it, don't have to do this, but I'm going to make the SME a hub. And this is going to be the HQ cluster is going to be one of the spokes. And this is going to be a spoke as well. In terms of our ILS network, very similar to frame relay type of situation, we want to avoid full mesh network. In our case with these three clusters, it really doesn't matter. You can make them all three hubs as well. So that's the situation I'm going to configure. And I'm going to show you a problem with what I've got with those black arrows here going across. When Site B sends the URI enterprise number, E164 number over to SME, they're going to appear in the database over here, and then the SME is going to forward those numbers on to the HQ cluster over here, but there is going to be a problem. Those the learned patterns are not going to show up in the database. Well, the arrows I've got in blue over here, the URI enterprise number, E164 number, is going to be published over to the SME from HQ and to the Site B cluster, and they're going to be just fine over here because Site B is a single node cluster. The problem will transmit itself when there's a database replication issue. So without further ado, let me go in and start doing some configuration. First thing I'm going to do is check the database replication on the HQ cluster. I've run the command utils db replication runtime state, and what I'm looking at here is the RTMT status of 2 on both of these nodes, the pub and the sub, which suggests that the database replication is working just fine. It says all tables are in sync, so it doesn't look like there's any database replication problem going on here. No point me running that command on the B cluster or the SME cluster because, as I just explained, they're a single node over there. Let me go over to the SME. The very first thing I should do on the SME, and in fact all the nodes, all the core managers, is just check the services are running. And I know for sure that the services are running on the HQ and the B cluster because I have a phone that's pre-registered over there. So I know they're good over there, but the SME I'm not so sure about. Okay, here's the SME, and it looks like most of the services I want are running. So core manager, obviously, and then we've got the where is that? The intercluster lookup service that started as well. Okay, so that's good news. Let me return back to the admin page there. And if you remember, if you've been through any of the other videos in ILS, we always have to make sure the cluster ID has been modified, because otherwise every cluster has the same cluster ID and they need to be unique. So let me go, in fact, on all three clusters, do a bit of multitasking. All three clusters, I'm going to go to enterprise parameters and just set it to a unique string. This information might be provided for you. You may have to provide a string that's conforming to what they've asked you to do. When I say they, the Cisco Testing Center. So here's my site B. Let me just put in site B there, dash cluster, not clister, cluster. Okay, and then I'm going to repeat those tasks on the SME dash cluster. Again, something wrong with my keyboard here, clearly not the user of it. SME cluster, and now let's go back to the HQ and put in HQ dash cluster. It says you got to restart services. You don't need to, not in this case. Third time's a charm, got it perfect there. Okay, so the enterprise parameters are being changed. I'm also going to go and make sure I have a URI provisioned on the phones on HQ and B. I'm also going to put an alternate number and an E164 number here. So let me go into this 8845 phone here, go on the primary DN. And down here we shall see the URI, and let me just put in a sensible URI, doesn't really matter what it is, HQ1 at CCIE.com. And let's put an alternate number in. So this could be an 8-digit. I'm going to put 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to be advertising this number as well over to the SME and the Site B cluster. So Site B could theoretically call me using this URI over here, HQ1 at CCIE.com, or they could call me using an 8-digit number like this. So I'm going to advertise that, and I can also add that as a partition. So add that as a number in a local partition, so that if I get a call coming in to 8202-2001, I know that this is on this phone, on this particular phone. And the number here is globalized, so I'm going to also advertise that as well. So the Site B phone can call me using one of three methods: URI, this alternate number, 8-digit number, and also the E164 number. I don't need to mask anything here because the actual DN at the top there I just showed you, it's already in a globalized format. I don't need to add this in a local partition because it's already in a local partition, but I do want to advertise it. Okay, so we are advertising the three numbers. Look over here on the right hand side. We are advertising the URI as well, the two numbers and the URI as well. So let's just save that on the HQ side, and we may or may not need to give it a reset. Let's just apply config. And we should always check in Route Plan Report that we have the three numbers that we're going to be advertising here. We've got the URI added, we've got the 8-digit number, we've got the globalized number. This was the old number of the phone, the 4 digits, not assigned to anybody. Let me just delete that one. Don't need that one. So just clean it up. I didn't have to do that, but a little bit of OCD. I do want to clean that up. So we've got the three numbers there. These are locally configured. These are the three things that are going to be advertised to the SME cluster and over to B. I'm going to repeat these tasks on Site B, so I'm not going to do so much talking this time. I'm just going to go in and configure the stuff, and you're going to see in Route Plan Report we have the mirror image of what we're trying to do here, except on the B cluster. So here we go. Here's the DN. Site B, let's put Site B1 at CCIE.com, the alternate number. So this is going to allow HQ phones to call using 8 digits, I'm going to add that as a local partition, advertising that. I'm going to advertise the E164 number, advertise that. So those are the three things we're advertising to the SME using ILS. Okay, and final check here. We should see the three entities, three things appear in Route Plan Report. Probably also got a 4-digit number that we can get rid of. Don't need that for anything else. Let's get rid of that. All right, now onto the SME. Now the SME has no phones, it has no DNs, so I don't need to go and add any URIs or any DNs. I've done the cluster ID. I'm going to go on to the ILS configuration now, which is over here under Advanced Config ILS configuration. And then over here, I'm going to make this a hub. And the route string doesn't really matter. This is the thing that's advertised to the other clusters along with the advertised pattern that that's going across. So again, it doesn't matter what this is. I'm going to just put this as hq_simi.route. And rather than wait every 10 minutes, I'm going to sync up every 60 seconds, every 1 minute. I'm not going to use certificates. I'm going to just use passwords. It's going to be a little bit simpler. And whatever password you want. I'm just putting CCIE Collabv in there. Save. And there's nothing to do here. I'm the first hub. So on the first hub, if you're the first node in the ILS network, you don't put anything inside there. We're now going to go over to the HQ cluster and get the ILS configuration over here complete. And we are going to, you can make it a spoke or a hub, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to make it a spoke, and I'm going to make sure that this says HQ pub12.route. Put 1 minute as the synchronization interval, and we're going to use, you know what, just going back, I did forget to check that box there, Exchange Global Dial Plan Replication. That is something I forgot. Let me just go back and correct that, which is what I've just done. Why would you ever have ILS without advertising any numbers, exchanging global dial plan replication data? Well, if cluster discovery, you can use ILS for other things, cluster discovery when you've got MRA, and that's one example that springs to mind. But in our case, we're actually using ILS for exchange of information of those three numbers I told you about. So we definitely want to check that checkbox. And I was reminded of that here. You see, let's just go and check that here on the spoke cluster and the certificates. Got to be the same password. I'm just putting in CCIE Collabv. Now this is where we put the hub IP address in, which is my SME. And don't save that. And let's go over to the Site B cluster, and we're going to do the same thing here. Don't forget that checkbox. I always forget that one. Site B, and you can make this route string whatever you want, but this is the tag that's going to be on every number or URI that's being advertised. So in effect, the HQ cluster is going to have a route pattern to this route string, and Site B would have to have HQ's route string. We'll have a SIP route pattern. I'm not actually interested in doing the core routing. I want to show you the bug. I'm not going to actually go in and get core routing set up in this particular video. Synchronize cluster every 1 minute, like I did before. Put the password in there, same password. Save that. And we'll have to enter the IP address of the hub that we're registering to. So this means that the HQ and the Site B cluster never communicate with each other at all. It's always going through the SME. So we have a situation where we'll never have any communication directly between the HQ cluster here and the B cluster there. Everything is going through the SME. This is in the middle because we have a situation where the HQ is a spoke to the SME. SME is the hub, and the B is another spoke. I'm now going to just wait for a minute or two, and I'm going to be looking on the SME in Route Plan Report whether the SME is learning any of these numbers that have been advertised from the spoke clusters. So let's go to Route Plan Report, and then let's just wait and see. The SME has no numbers or patterns in its database. It's only having learned numbers and patterns, and you can see very clearly here that we've learned the URI information from the Site B cluster and the HQ cluster down there. We've learned the alternate numbers from HQ and Site B, and we've learned the E164 numbers from HQ and Site B. And you can see the route string on the right hand side, what the route string is. So the SME would have to have a route pattern, SIP route pattern, to that particular route string. So I'm not going to go in and do that, but that's where the route string that I mentioned earlier is. And you can see the type of number in Route Plan Report is learn pattern, learn URI. It places the learn numbers in partitions that are automatically there in a fresh install of Core Manager, but the URIs are not placed in a partition. They're in the none partition by default, which is fine by me. So your calling search spaces of SIP trunks would have to contain these partitions here. Again, I reiterate, the purpose of this video is not to show you the core routing. I've done that in several other videos. It's to see this bug that you're going to face inside the lab potentially. So let's go to the Site B cluster over here. Have we learned the information from the SME? So we have. You can see on the type of number here, you can see there's some learn numbers which are not locally provisioned. My directory number over here is locally provisioned. I've got my learn URI over here, my learn number over here as well. Okay, so we're learning the information on the Site B side. So if I set up my core routing, I would never have a SIP route pattern or a route pattern to the learn numbers. For example, let's just take this enterprise number here. This one here, this learn number here, 8202-2001. I would never have a route pattern to that number. I would have a route pattern to its route string. Or you can click on the number as well, and inside there it tells you what the route string is, and so you would have a SIP route pattern to that. You don't have route patterns or any kind of core routing to the actual learn number. It's always to the route string. Now, without further ado, let's just see if we can run into that bug now. And I'm getting nervous because sometimes it doesn't materialize, and it has in this case. On the HQ side, I've only got my locally provisioned numbers and URIs. I don't have any learn information. So we've learned the information. Okay, we're learning the information from B coming in that way. The three numbers I've mentioned. And so we've got, I'm just going to abbreviate a little bit here. We've got the URI. Got a problem with my whiteboard here a little bit. The URI, the E164 number. I'm just going to put the numbers over here. But the SME, something happened here. The SME is not propagating those numbers to the HQ cluster, or at least they're not showing up in the database over here. On Cisco's website, it gives you a bit more of a description of the bug that we're running into. It says utils DB replication runtime state shows 2 for all nodes in the cluster, which is what we saw in the HQ when I was on the CLI. However, ILS was never given the OK to start learning updating directory URIs from peer clusters, resulting in the missing URIs. So it tells you here, this table here, remote directory URI has missing patterns from the hub cluster. After UCM upgrade, ILS was never given, okay, fair enough. Now, what's most important is the workaround. I've tried doing a utils DB replication repair, reset, but we need to run this command, utils DB replication rebuild all from the HQ cluster. So let me go in, back on the HQ cluster, let me go in the CLI, and we do this from the publisher node. So I've got that on my clipboard. Let me just paste that in there, and it tells you what it's going to do. It's going to do a stop on the subscriber, all the nodes, utils DB replication stop is going to happen, and then on all the nodes, because I put rebuild all, then it's going to do a drop admin DB, and then it's going to do a utils DB replication reset, all in one command, rebuild all. So let me put yes, and I'm going to be pausing the video here rather than making you watch paint dry. And I think this takes about 2 minutes before it completes what it's doing. But then we're going to go and run the utils DB replication runtime state again to make sure it's still 2. It's going to take, all in all, it'll take about 25-30 minutes, maybe slightly less, 20 minutes or so, for it to complete what it's going to be doing. At the end of it, we're going to then go back and check the route plan report on HQ, and rather just seeing the 3 locally provisioned numbers and patterns there, we're going to see the learned information that we're receiving from the SME, in other words the Site B stuff. So it takes about 2.21 minutes exactly for it to complete this rebuild, but it hasn't completed doing what it's doing. So let's do a utils DB replication and then runtime state, which is what I ran beforehand. Got to make sure it's returned back to that status of 2, the RTMT status of 2. So it currently says it's batch sync request. It's doing something. It looks like I'll be interested to see what it says down here. It's taking its time. So it hasn't quite gone into the RTM status of 2. I'm going to give this another 5-10 minutes and try again, but I've got to wait until this is complete before I can really rest assured that the database is working and ILS then should be in the database. So I'm going to pause the video again and come back later on. So what it's doing now, it says it's syncing the tables. It says sync progress, checked 498 tables out of 718. So I will getting closer and closer. Again, I'm going to pause the video again and come back. The bug, I must mention, is only apparent on this Core Manager version 12.01 21.900. My Site B Core Manager and my SME, some of the other pods, my other racks, I upgraded it and I never ran into this particular bug. I think some of the others have 22.900. So this is very specific to this version. Okay, where we only saw the 3, we didn't see any learn information. So now I've completed it's gone into the runtime state. It looks like it's completed doing what it's doing, syncing up the database, and I hit find. We should see the learn patterns, and voila, there they are. Now we must be also very careful. After rebooting the HQ cluster, we very well may run into the same issue that we may have to rebuild the database again. So this would only affect you if you hadn't done ILS. So let's just take a situation where I put the rebuild all command in very early on in the day, and then for whatever reason I had to reboot the cluster, and then I did my ILS. We may very well have the same problem. So I advise you in the lab environment that you should run the rebuild all command if you run into this particular issue that I showed you, but don't reboot any of the Core Manager nodes over at HQ. Otherwise you may need to rebuild all again. So that is the end of this video. Hopefully you find it useful. You will definitely find it useful if you run into this particular bug in the testing environment.